life works out so perfectly for you, you'd be surprised. It's like up until now, your fear has been in the driver's seat, as in it's the one that's been making decisions. And the brain is so brilliant that fear literally becomes you. Like literally your subconscious mind becomes you, as in you're making decisions as your subconscious mind, as your fear. But then something happens in life where you're brought to a point where you get to see that you're not your subconscious mind, or you're not your identity, or you're not this personality or this voice or this narrator in your head. You're not your past. You're not things that happened to you. You're not your mind. Like truly, all of that deduced down to just the simple fact that you are not your mind. You are not a thought that you have here. And in one way or another, this is revealed to you. It's revealed differently to every single human being. And there's thousands of terms for it, I'm sure, in all cultures, like around the world. And just any way that we can refer to this unique process that happens in our life. And many people refer to it as awakening or spiritual awakening. And it really is when you stop identifying as the wound that you didn't even know that you were operating as, and you start identifying as the witness. And to take that a step further, spiritual awakening is the process where you discover through your direct experience that there is not even an identification with the witness. So you just are the witness. And it's not the you that has a story. It's not the you that has an identity or even a name or a family. It's just consciousness. And this is the most beautiful and highest revelation that we can have as human beings. And when it should come to you, your entire life changes. Like literally from the moment that it comes to you, you are willing to walk out of your life as it is for what we call the kiss of God. People refer to it sometimes as this. It's literally like being kissed by God, or being kissed by the universe revealing itself to you, showing itself to you in its magnanimousness, in its utter and sheer absolute beauty, the oneness, the bliss. And when you have this experience, literally your whole life changes, and you don't even know what it is many times when it happens. But everyone experiences this, I think, also differently. And it could be a moment, or it could be a few hours, or it could be for people like months of this kind of bliss. But however it happens for you, the essence truly is this: that what you are fundamentally in this body is that which was never born, will never die, is beyond the concept or the word unseen. It is the forceless force, the experienceless experience. Peace, oneness, unity, bliss beyond the concept, beyond the words. And it's so unexplainable that we human beings, we literally just try. We try our best to put our finger on it, but you never quite can. It's not possible. We attempt to with words. But even the mind, which is the greatest attempter, the greatest efforter to try and get it, cannot. Because it is the absence of this mind, because that experience is the absence of this mind. And we truly are this fundamental essence, right? We have never not been it, but in our life, throughout our life, it has become covered up by a mask, which we call the personal identity, or the personality even. Like, hi, I'm Zakia, I'm 37 years old, I'm female, I work with kids and parents, and I help people with spiritual awakening. This person has a psychological sense, a psychological sense of living inside of me. And it's this sense that dissolves with spiritual awakening. Literally, because this sense only exists in the personal identity, in the personal mind. And the sense of this person literally exists out of fear. So the fact that this story plays in the mind, or that the movie reel plays in the mind, or the narration that is telling the story of what is happening 24/7, right, every waking moment, the fact that these things play in the mind, the need for them to play is because there's fear in the body, right? And because that fear hasn't been felt fully, right? When we were children, out of conditioning, or our parents never were able to show us how to be with that fear fully, or how to be with ourselves fully, all of our emotions, all of our feelings, because we were never shown that, we never learned that. Fear has resided in our body, and because it's just been continuing to reside here for years and decades even, right? Thought arises, thought appears as the greatest coping mechanism that the mind has. And all it really is just an attempt to protect us. But if you look at the thoughts closely and you really examine them, you'll see that they have a very specific flavor. And that flavor can be traced to the early roots of your conditioning, the early roots of how you had to survive, either in your first relationships with your parents, or later on, or throughout your life, right? There's a very specific flavor there. So when you sit with your thoughts, you can really see this flavor. And then when you become familiar with it, right, the more you become familiar with it, that's the joy of awakening and coming out of this personal identity, right, out of this personal mind, is the more you see it for what it is, the clearer you see, the more the mind loses its power. And what once was so much noise and chatter and psychological and mental suffering for decades here. I know some of you are listening to this and you're like, yeah, it's been playing for 40 years here nonstop, right? And I've done everything in the book that I could to really, help myself feel better. But this is the end to every single one of those journeys, every single ways of trying to help ourselves, to regulate ourselves, to manage our emotions. Really, what it comes down to is the root force, the life force energy of fear. And that is the root of all the fear in the body, actually, because there was an original identification with the body that occurred at maybe 2 years old, right? When we first realized that we are separate from our mom. We're standing in the mirror and we see, oh my gosh, I'm not my mom. Like, I have a separate body. I'm a separate person than my mom. And this is, complete and utter shock to like an adult at any time in their life. So imagine, right? Imagine a 2-year-old. This is the greatest fear that literally comes over the body, and it occurs like at the earliest stage when we have zero experience of anything, of life, of anything. And so it's this original like fear, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I'm not one with my mom, right? I'm separate. I'm a separate person. And so we go from the pure consciousness that we are, right? That we were, when we were a baby, right? Of course. And we still are, right? We don't stop being this consciousness, right? But what happens is fear takes root in the body, and we identify as the body. So we identify as this. And then on top of this become, all layers of identification then pile onto this. So I am Zakia. I am 2 years old. I am Muslim. I am Christian. I am an athlete. I am smart. I am kind. I am funny. I am a businesswoman. I am a doctor. I am a lawyer. I am a teacher. Any kind of identification just piles on top of this. And literally, these are the simple identifications. This root identity is playing in our head all the time, right? So as we go through life, every moment it's telling a story. So it's not playing such simple thoughts as I am an athlete, right? It's playing thoughts that are way more complex, way more elaborate, right? And then also somewhere in our childhood and throughout our life, right, or throughout our life, we develop these beliefs, right, that take that become part of this identity, right? We learn somehow, and these beliefs are rooted in our subconscious mind, right? Where this identity, right, where all fear occurs, right? It is literally in the subconscious mind, and we are not aware of it. And so beliefs like, I am not good enough, or I am good enough, or I'm not smart, right? So it plays both way. Identity plays both way, and fear plays both way, because wherever there's a fear, right, there's a need for compensation, and there's a need to feel better, right? And so the mind is really brilliant at this, and it's doing this all our life. And so these are very, simple statements that I mentioned, but they are very complex. Like the movie reel that's playing here and the thoughts that are playing here can be very elaborate, right? Painting scenarios of that party that I went to last Saturday, and and he said this and she said this, and I didn't know what to say, and they were laughing at me, and then the drink spilled, and then it's very, very complex, right? Entire scenarios and situations. But if you sit with the thought, you can still trace it back to the original flavor, right? The original flavor that you could trace back to your conditioning when you were like, oh my gosh, when I was like 4 years old, and I needed to survive. I needed to please my mom in order to survive, and so I became a people pleaser. And now I can see that so many of my thoughts really revolve around how I'm received, how somebody will interpret me. And I do the very same thing here with other people's behavior. I overanalyze their behavior to death, right? To the death, right? And it's not really me that's doing it, right? And maybe you've come to this point in your life where you're like, oh my gosh, I see these thoughts, and I realize it's like they're kind of coming up and I can't control them. And that's key right there. If you've come to that point, right, and you realize, oh my gosh, I can't control my mind, you are so right. Because you are not your mind, and you are not your identity, as in that original identity, right? So that identity that took root when you were 2 years old from identifying with your body, right, is the same identity now that is like, oh, I am good enough, or I am good with people, right? All let's say it's taking the people pleasing kind of journey in your life, right? So it's the same I, right? And in order for these thoughts to arise, in order for these kind of flavors of thoughts to arise, there has to be a personality that's having the thoughts, right? And so the brain is so brilliant, because literally you will identify as the personality, so you will identify as the I. But this is the illusion. The greatest illusion of the mind is the illusion of the I. And so the brain, out of its brilliance, becomes the I. You become the identity, right? Without even knowing it. You become the fear, because the brain literally this is what it does to survive, and you don't even know it. And in spirituality, we say, this is this is the personal identity, as in, for some reason or another, right? This is the play of life where the identity, right, becomes me fully, right? As in God, pure consciousness, has forgotten itself, and only God can forget himself entirely and do this, literally, forget the truth of what he is, right? The forget his true nature and identify with fear and not even know it. And so this is also utter blindness, which is unconditional love, that God would allow this to happen. That when you walk around and you see so many people, right, and when you do this work and you heal and you awaken, and now see people who are on the other side where you used to be, and they are living in the conditioning, still living in the delusion. And that is perfection too, because God has allowed that too. And right, that it's part of their journey, that it's meant to be that way. And that was you too, and that was part of your journey. It's part of everyone's journey, right? I think, anyway. But this is the play of life, right? To identify, right? And then once we have identified enough, right, there comes a point in our life where we now experience suffering. We suffer the identity. We suffer the identity's thoughts, right? and we endure that suffering, we feel that suffering. So up until this point, right, maybe there was a lot of psychological suffering that led us to awakening, right? There was a lot of mental suffering, a lot of noise, a lot of chatter that, there came a point in our life where like, oh my God, I can't escape this. There's nothing that I can do, that nothing is working anymore. Even my healthy habits of yoga and meditating and writing, or maybe not meditating, because it's a little bit different for me, but working, there's no escape from my mind anymore. And so what happens is, like, there comes a point in your life where literally you're called to sit with this. You're literally called to sit with your mind. And you're gonna see, and usually that's when, the experience, like right before that happens, we have the experience of our fundamental nature, right? What we are in this body, what was never born, what can never die. We have that experience. And it's literally like the truth in us has been awakened from this experience. So now everything that is not the truth, like, begins, like, it's on a countdown now, because everything that is not the fundamental essence of who we are, comes up to be seen, right? Trillions of things for the first time will come up to be seen by you, and many of them to be felt by you, like, especially like, after you do a lot of, like, the initial, like, initial meditating maybe, and a lot of looking, and a lot of, you're just like, you don't know what's going on. There's sort of something that's compared to a pendulum that swings back and forth, because you've now had the experience of the fundamental essence, right? Your true nature, right? That pure consciousness. So once you have this experience, you are now going to go on a seeming journey to transition fully into this, right? As in, your experience will become fully this. So if you imagine that oneness, if you imagine that bliss, right, you are going to return home, as in your every moment will become this, right? So before awakening, it was like so much noise, so much chatter all the time, and then a few moments here or there of like peace, right? Oh gosh, God, that's how it was. That's doubly how it was. And then once you awaken, and once you have the experience of like your true nature, this pendulum starts to swing now, right? It's going to go from the true nature to your identity, right? Ego, mind, back to your true nature. And it swings like this for sometimes several years of a very concentrated period of time where you're just sitting. You're just sitting in your being with this. And if there's something that I wish, someone had told me before, in my life, I think could have avoided a lot of like psychological suffering, right? I wish somebody told me when I was a kid and my dad died, right? Just to feel the pain, because that's something that I had never done until like year 2 after I had the experience of my true nature. And I'm now sitting, the pendulum is swinging, and year 2 came, and it was almost like I had meditated, like nothing but meditated the whole first year, right? And it was like I did all of that just to get to the real work, which was the emotional work, which was like the deep-rooted traumas and deep-rooted stories. Hundreds of them, hundreds of them. Like more than and whenever it comes up, it's always like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that I was holding on to this moment, right? It's not just the big events in life. It's not just the tragedies and the significant life transitions. It's not those. It's like, it's thousands of moments, right? Trillions of moments that are just like pain was held on to on even the most subtle level. And now you will sit with it, right? And your whole life you've been running from pain, your whole life up until now. And even then you thought like you did a pretty good job, like healing it, right? Like meditating, doing yoga, journaling, like all things that that were even healthy. And now you see, oh my gosh, like those were all, like even the best of them, even the best of routines, even the best of, activities that I did, they were all in an effort to mentally feel better. And now I see that in a way, all of those were still coping mechanisms. And now you're going to deal with the root of the pain. And that's why this process is it's so sacred. It is literally the most sacred process that we undergo as human beings. And when it happens, it's just like, there's no say in how it will happen, when it will happen, right? It happens differently for every single human being, and it happens differently every moment for like one human being, right? So I have no say over how it happens. You have no say over how it happens. And that's every moment that it happens for the several years that it happens in your life. You kind of just like literally like the universe takes hold of you and takes you on a ride. And you know it too. You know it too, because this whole time you've been chasing the universe. You've been chasing God. You've been, you know, chasing your ideals, right? And now it's the other way around. Like, you know, God turns around and starts chasing you. And Adi Ashanti says something so beautiful. He says, you start to run like hell, right? Because when that really happens, that's like, you know it and there's no escape from it. And you're really told like to sit and be with it, not to run. You're not going to run this time. And you're going to be with life. You're going to be with yourself in a way that you've never been before. And you're going to, once you come out of this, the more and more you come out of this, the more and more you heal, the more and more you sit, the more and more you see clearly, the more and more your eyes are cleared. You're going to be alive in a way that you've never been before. And you're going to be in touch with life. You're going to have like a renewed sense of like vibrancy, of radiance, of feeling, of speaking, of breathing. Literally everything, your entire experience changes. Everything from like even like functions in your body, you know, your nervous system, the like, you know, the deep breaths that you're going to take now, and even the process of breathing deeper, like, you know, and you know, sinking more into your body, and that's a really big a transition that we make into awakening, because there's so much stored energy that is in the body that is released during this process, right? Stored pain, stored trauma, and we're releasing all of this energy, all of it. And so I'd love to hear your stories about how it has happened for you. Please, if you resonate with this, you know, feel free to leave a comment and share your story. Share kind of what it looked like and what helped you so much. You know, I know this process is so, you know, it's so sacred and it happens like differently, that there are so many people that experience this that don't even know what it is, and they don't have any help. They don't even know what it is while it's happening to them. And so it's really good that, you know, that we make these kinds of videos, and that we get to, you know, build a sense of community, and then just, you know, to let each other know that we're not alone. Because I know during this time, I mean, there's a part of it that you have to go through alone. And no matter, even if you have like, you know, the greatest help, you still got to do it alone, right? You've got to traverse the underworld. You've got to traverse your mind. You've got to do that alone. Only you can do that, right? So you've got to walk your path alone, regardless, right? But even just to have the comfort of community, and to know maybe what to expect, and even to know like, okay, like, you know, my mind is going to take the shape of everything I learn, everything I consume. Even these words that I'm listening to, my mind is going to copy that. It's going to imitate them. And I'm going to be in that delusion for a while too, until I see it clearly. And then maybe then I'll spend more time like on my own, you know, just to know what to expect. And I think, you know, I think if we share our experiences and whatever knowledge we've gained, right, then we just help each other feel less alone in the greatest and most difficult experience, transition that we make as human beings in this lifetime. I love you so much, and I'm Zakia. Please leave a comment, connect with somebody else in the comments, and share your story, support somebody, and let them know they're not alone. I love you so much. I'll see you soon. Take care.